Welcome to the Happy Black Woman Podcast, where we're on a mission to empower women to transform their lives through personal development and entrepreneurship. We bring you all the information, inspiration, and motivation you need to create a life of happiness, success, and freedom. Now, please welcome your host, the happy Black woman herself, Rosetta Thurman.
Hello, ladies, and welcome back to the Happy Black Woman Podcast. We are now on our 101st episode. So welcome to all of you who are joining us now in our second year of the podcast. We just had our 2-year anniversary, and I am back with another incredible conversation with an inspiring Black woman entrepreneur. Today, I have with me Jill Flowers, who is known as the Soul Activist and a spiritual life coach. Welcome, Jill, to the show.
Thank you, Rosetta. Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Happy to have you. I always love to tell my audience how I know my guests, like what makes someone be a great guest for the Happy Black Woman show. Well, number one, I need to know you. And the way that I know Jill is that she has been a member of our Happy Black Woman tribe and also a client in our Happy Black Woman mastermind program. So I've gotten to know her and her business pretty well over these past months. And I'm so excited to share with you the work that she is doing for Black women specifically. And so, Jill, for everyone who doesn't know you yet, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yes. So I consider myself a soul activist. And that is really my passion and my purpose is around taking a stand for the emotional and spiritual healing of Black women. And deeper than that is the belief that I have and what I know is that when Black women are healed and happy and living a fulfilled life, everyone around them benefits. And that includes the men, the children, other women, and it filters into our community as a whole.
Yeah, I love that, you look at this work as not just benefiting the woman herself, but everyone around her. I think a lot of us forget that when we do work on ourselves, it's not just for us, but it's about impacting the relationships that we have, impacting how we see ourselves, but also how other people see us as we walk through the world. So that's awesome. Tell us a little bit about how you got into this work. Like, how did you end up deciding that this was going to be the work you would dedicate your life to?
Well, what I started to say about myself recently is that there are many installments of Jill, of myself. And I really have to say that this has just been a lifelong work in terms of just being of service. So I became ordained over, 2010. So over 7 years now, I've been an ordained interfaith minister. And before that, I was really involved in a movement that I started with my husband, Abolish the N-word. And within that movement, I just changed. And I just took everything that I knew around metaphysics and spirituality and really started to put it into the movement and the campaign to abolish the N-word. And I believe that same message, that spirit is still on me to support the Black community with everything that I know. And so I've always been somebody who's been of service and wanting to help and wanting to support. And I feel very passionate about healing the Black community in any way that I know how. And this is one step, is to really bring the spirituality, the metaphysics to Black women and allow us to be the healers that I know that we are.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, I know that this has been an ongoing journey for you to get to the point where you know that this is the work that you want to do. But I want to dig a little deeper and really go back to your own experience with this process. So I don't think most people wake up and they say, I want to be an interfaith minister. What was it in your life or in your past that called you initially to this work?
You know, the memory that I have, I grew up in a house with my grandparents, my aunts, but I can't remember how, it's about 15 of us living in a house, and my grandparents were Baptist preachers, and we lived above the church that they preached from. So my grandmother was always anointing us, always putting a drop of oil on our heads, on our foreheads, always praying over us. And so I just always had this relationship, whether it was with religion or whether it was spirituality. I just have never known anything else. And I recall at 10 years old, I took my money and I went to the mall and I bought my first Bible and just started to read the Bible and just started to, I was like, I'm going to read this Bible from the beginning to the end. And so I just became known among my friends and among my circle. I just became known as the spiritual one, the person that people would come to for advice, even at, 12 years old. And as we go further, my mother became sick when I was 14, and she was diagnosed with breast cancer. And in the midst of her illness, the thing that I had was my spirituality. And I was able to support not just my mother in her transitioning, but also my whole entire family at 14 years old. And I just started to also have these experiences with spirit. I started to have these experiences as a prayer warrior where I would pray for people and people would come back to me and say, you said a prayer for me and this wonderful thing happened, or I was relieved from this issue or this challenge, or things would just resolve.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just started to see that I had this relationship with spirit, that God spoke through me was one of the ways that I started to describe how I saw myself, and just starting to have almost out-of-body experiences. And so it just slowly moved into really doing more research around spirituality, reading about spirituality, and just going in depth, training myself almost, not knowing that I would end up here, but just really studying around religion and spirituality and people having miraculous healings. It's just always fascinated me. And that's the beginning of my story until we reached here.
So many of our journeys begin young, and it's very courageous for you to see it through, to see what there was in store for you, because you could have put it to the side and it's well, I will just help people in my family. But you really went for it and you developed the gifts that you had been given and you decided to offer them up to the world, which is a really powerful step that most women, unfortunately, many women do not take, even when they have a gift and a calling. So what was it for you that had you say, you know what, I'm going to literally turn this into a movement, a business. I'm going to help any woman who wants to come and get healing. What was that point for you?
Anger. I was listening one night, driving with he was my boyfriend at the time. Now he's my husband. But we were listening to a radio station, news, and there were all these people calling in about the N-word and how they could say the N-word and what it meant. And the people who were calling in were not people of African descent. There were a lot of people who were calling in and identifying from different cultures and races and saying, well, this is why I say it. And I say it because, it's cool and it's hip. And I came into the house, I looked up, some stuff on the computer, and I was like, we are going to we're going to get a t-shirt and we're going to wear t-shirts and we're going to abolish the N-word. We're just going to abolish it. And that really was the beginning of a movement where we had a video that went viral. We just had, we took images from a book and just made a slideshow. And it basically, I think the first week we had 10,000 hits on the website, and then it moved to 100,000. And then we were global and people started to ask us to speak. And for me, it just started to go deeper. It started to go into what we say and how we see ourselves and the vibration of sound and the energy of words and names and what we link ourselves to, and how powerful it has been for us to not just call each other different words, but to link ourselves vibrationally to these words. And that it's just always been a part of my teaching, a part of when I just speak to people, how we call ourselves, how we see ourselves. I get to say, what you call me.
Mm-hmm.
The anger turned to passion when I saw that I was able to affect change, when I saw that I was able to teach and support children. We were going into schools, speaking to children as young as 7 and 8 years old because the teachers complained that they were using this word.
Right. And it seems like at that point you discovered your own power to be able to affect change.
Yes.
There's so many of us that have a message inside of us, or we have, something that we want to teach or offer up, but it's that initial, like, getting it out so that you can see the power that you have. We all have the power to influence and transform and bring people along with whatever it is that we believe. So you had that experience. And now what is it that you do specifically as a spiritual life coach? Is it, I'm thinking traditional coaching, it's, you're talking to people on the phone, but how do you do it?
I have a monthly healing circle. So that's one of my outlets where I have Black women come every month. We have a topic. We don't always stay on topic, but we have a topic. And that's one of the ways where we come together. We acknowledge that there is an issue. We accept those areas about ourselves that may be challenged. And we focus really on the opposite and go into healing the belief. So, one of our directives, if you are looking at sacred scripture, is to be transformed by the renewing of our mind. And so it's really the beliefs and the thoughts that we have that align with our actions and our behaviors. So we go in and we make those connections. I also, as a spiritual life coach, I offer private consultations. So I will counsel people individually. I will counsel people via the phone. So we talk on the phone. And I have, depending on what the issue is, I might just put someone in an actual program, a soul alignment program, and we'll go through different steps. Or if someone just has a specific problem or challenge that they'd like to work on, then I'm flexible towards what they need as an individual for private coaching. So those are two ways that I support women in healing their emotional and spiritual wellness.
I can just tell, and I know from working with you over these past months, like how powerful this work can be for the reasons that we shared earlier about just not just for the woman, but for her family, for the people around her in the world in general. For the woman listening, and she's like, I know I need some healing. I know I need to look at some things in my life, especially from a spiritual perspective. What are some ways that she can get started? Like, do you have, 3 strategies or tips that you can offer to our listeners for how they can begin their own healing?
Yes, I do. Well, an issue or a problem cannot be solved if we do not acknowledge that there is an issue. So a lot of time, you might see someone who has no idea that there's a problem. So they're unable to really get to that point of healing. So first and foremost, my first tip is to acknowledge that there is an issue. And along with that, to accept that not only is there an issue, but you are able to rise above this issue. So I use a formula really of acknowledge, accept, and align. And it's not as simple as that, but the align part is to align with your divinity, to align with the power that's already inside of you. Mm-hmm. And it's difficult to have that understanding. So you need someone or a group of someone's to hold that vision for you. So you can easily acknowledge, you can also accept, but when it comes to the aligning part, it's harder to align with the divinity that's inside of you, especially if you're feeling like I'm not good enough or I'm not worthy. So for someone like myself, as a spiritual life coach and as a soul activist, I am holding the high vision for the women that I work with. So I am seeing not just your potential, but your power to be able to align with that goodness that's inside of yourself, to move towards your self-mastery and to rise above the issue. And really, that's the only way that we can begin the healing process, is to move ourselves out of the issue, out of the space, and to rise above.
Yeah, that is such a powerful step forward, and often the most difficult, because it's almost like, one of the things that I love to say is that we are in the world, but we are not of the world. And that was a spiritual saying that I learned years ago from going to church. And when life circumstances are so immediate and present to us, it's hard to realize that this doesn't have anything to do with me. Like, I am a child of God and I deserve the best and all the affirmations and all that. So to pull yourself out of that takes some effort.
Yes. You have to be in action around your own healing. You have to be in action around your own happiness. And that was a challenge for me. I had to also learn that nothing outside of myself was going to make me happy. No boyfriend, no girlfriend, no friends, no special food, no special pill, that it was really up to me. And that came with a decision. And the decision was to be in action around my own healing.
Mm-hmm. Great. Awesome. What other tips do you have for us?
I think a big tip is to decide, as I just mentioned, to make that decision that I am my own healer. I am my own everything, that I am the one that I have been waiting for. So many of us sometimes are waiting for the doctor, the mother, the husband, the boyfriend, the children. We're always waiting. We're always in this mode of, well, when they grow up, or when this happens, or when I lose, 50 pounds. Like, we're always in this moment of where we're waiting. And I think, not even I think, but my experience was to decide and then take action. So I had to decide that where I was the right place to begin. And I had to decide what was the action that I was going to take. And I had to decide, here's step 1, be patient with myself. Step 2, keep moving forward, stay in action. What's the next thing that I have to do? So I really, really, really want to put an emphasis on how powerful our decisions are, and to make the decision and then take action after we make the decision.
Yes, the decision always comes first. Well, I think that, the women listening, it's one thing to know for yourself that something needs to change, but to hear from a spiritual life coach to say these are the first steps you can take, it's really a gift to hear that. So thank you, Jill. Now, for you, I always like to know from my guests, like, how do you implement this, your strategies and your beliefs and your teachings in your own life? So again, being in the world, but not of the world, how do you manage your work of serving these other women, but also having to take care of yourself? How do you stay focused and productive and not burn out in doing all of this?
Well, I'm not an early riser, but I make myself get up early. So I have to get up early, earlier than my family, so that I can be in prayer, I can meditate, and I can journal. And on a great morning, I'm able to do all three. On a good morning, I will do all three, but it will take me, 15 minutes, and I will go into prayer, a prayer of gratitude. And I will really put myself deep in gratitude around my life, and not just what I have, but who I am and who the people are that are around me that make me who I am. So I go into gratitude. I'm also very big on forgiveness as a spiritual practice. So there are moments where I have to really release and let go of things that just little interactions, little microaggressions that I may have experienced, that in the morning or in my night practice, I will have to release those things. So gratitude, forgiveness, and I will write. Sometimes it's a sentence. It's not a whole page. I'm not journaling for hours. Sometimes it's just a sentence of, I might write, I am enough. Or I might write, today I move with ease. And I set my intention for the day. When it is all done and over, I set my intention for the day. And that intention will move me throughout the day. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I like to put in my intentions, I want to laugh every day. And sometimes I might say, I'm setting my intention to laugh today. And then sometimes I set my intention to have belly aching, eye tearing, falling over laughter. Like, that's what I want for the day. And when I find myself just really chuckling at something, I'll go, wow, like that, in setting your intention, putting your will and making that decision around the day that you're going to have, it works. Mm-hmm. I take the mornings for myself. And after that, the kids can be whatever they need to be. People can act a fool. People can be crazy. Mm-hmm. I'm good because I'm grounded and I'm centered. And, that's really how I stay on track.
Yes, I love all of those pieces, especially the part about setting the intention, because setting the intention is awesome in that, it does work, but just the act of setting the intention is an acknowledgement that we have power over the day, that we have control over how we show up. We have control, so that it's already an acknowledgement that there's nothing outside of us that can affect us to the point where we have a bad day. If we set the intention, this is what it's going to be because I said it will be so. That's just a beautiful way to start out.
Yes. Yes. And that's seeing ourselves. You have to see yourself as, if you can't make it to co-creator, then allow yourself to be the co-creator of your day. Mm-hmm. Allow yourself to, this is how I create my day, is by setting my intention. It doesn't always work that way. No. Mm-hmm. But I always have to dial back to, when I set my intention, what was the emotion that I was having? What was the experience that I was having when I was setting my intention? So that's another part of just manifesting, is really being clear and centered on your emotions as well.
Yes. Yes. Especially as women, having one negative emotion can send us, can take us out for the whole day.
Yes. Exactly. But we have everything we need to bring us back into alignment. I know we've talked a little bit about alchemy, and I talk sometimes to the women about their alchemy, and that's their ability, that's their gifting, that's their uniqueness to be able to put themselves back in alignment when they're off-centered, when we're off-centered. We have everything we need. And it doesn't always feel like that. Sometimes it's stressful, sometimes it's crazy, but we can, in the middle of all of the craziness, get centered. So we can, in the middle of, I live in New York, in the middle of Times Square, we can call in what we need and become grounded in that moment. And that's using our spiritual tools, that's using our alchemy to transmute all of the confusion that may be around us at some time.
Yeah, definitely. And again, for me, it always just reminds me that I'm not powerless, because there's so much that can happen that comes from within. And to be connected to that with the practices that you shared with us already is worthwhile. I mean, but here's the thing. So here's what I want to ask you. There are women who are listening who are saying, but I don't have time. And recently we had our first Happy Black Woman summer camp, and we heard this a lot. We went up to the mountain, and literally women were saying, I haven't taken the time to connect with God or with spirit or with myself in so long. Like, what do you say to women who are like, well, between the kids and the job and the business and the volunteer and the whatever, like, I don't have time to connect with myself and my spirituality?
Well, for some of us, it really is a life or sickness situation. It is a must to be able to take the time that you need. And that's when we have to start looking at our lives and who we are putting first. So it's challenging for us as women because we are natural givers. We are natural at putting people before ourselves, but it's killing us. I had to, that used to be my motto. That used to be my belief. And I had to change that belief. And I had to say, this is what I am making time for. And what you do is you start to look and see what it is that you can give up, what it is that you can, in certain areas, it might be a sacrifice. It's not going to be easy. You may have to sacrifice waking up a half an hour earlier. You may have to sacrifice going to bed just a little bit later. It's about looking at your priorities, making a list of every single thing that you do and saying, you know what? There's some time over here. When I was looking at TV for 45 minutes, there's some time right here. Mm-hmm. Also, as creatives, we are able to take a situation and flip it around. And, maybe this is where I will have my spirituality is in my commute to work. Mm-hmm. Maybe in the car. I do a lot of listening in the car to trainings, and I listen to you, Rosetta, in my car a lot of times. Mm-hmm. So if you're traveling, that's valuable time. If you are traveling to work and you have a commute that is 10 minutes or more, you have time in that commute to listen to something that's inspirational. You can record yourself saying affirmations. You can play those affirmations back and hear your own voice saying your affirmations. Mm-hmm. So when I hear people say, well, I don't have time, one of the things that we do is we look at their schedule and we look at, well, where can we have some time?
Yeah.
Where can we create the time? We are creators. You can create the time.
Right. Because we create time to do stuff for other people all the time. It's like, exactly. If a friend needs help or needs a shoulder to cry on, all of a sudden my afternoon is free, Yep. So I love that. I think sometimes it's also about giving ourselves permission to take the time for ourselves, which is crazy to me. I mean, I grew up in Baptist church. My grandmother was the one who introduced me to church, and I'm more spiritual than religious these days. I haven't stepped foot in church in a while, but I remember that was always like the time. Like, it's Sunday morning and that's the only time.
Yep.
These days, especially for people who don't go to church, it's essential to carve out that time, at least for daily prayer, meditation, whatever it is that you want to do to connect, because otherwise, the longer time goes on, you get disconnected. And then you forget that you're a child of God. You forget that you're this creative, being. You forget about your own power, and you start making decisions that are like, what, who was that made that decision?
Yep. And what I want to say about that is, even if you're not getting what you want, even if it doesn't look the way you want it to, and you have like, oh, I don't have any time, you still created that space where you don't have any time. You're still creating. It may not be what you want. It may not be what you like, but you are still in the process of creating. No matter what your reality looks like, you're the only one that's in there creating, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
So you can flip it around and change your perspective and start saying, you know what? I know I have time. Let me find out where that time is.
Yeah. Yeah. I love what you said. This is kind of the tough love part of this work is like, you created a situation where you don't have time, but it's an acknowledgement of our own power. Like, you're so powerful. We are all so powerful that we can make our lives miserable, but we can also make our lives enjoyable as well.
Yes.
Cool. Well, I know that, along your journey, there have been different resources, and I know you studied a lot around spirituality and religion and personal growth and development. What's one of the books that you have come across that was like a game changer for you that you can recommend to our listeners?
Well, I have to say, I read authors, and I sometimes read several books at a time. And it's really because I was like, well, I was in college and I had to read all these books. I didn't just read one book in college. So I just take that practice throughout my life. And so I read Dr. Wayne Dyer. He is a huge inspiration for me in terms of like just new thought. Joel Goldsmith, his book, all of his books really talk about the power that we have. And it comes from a very metaphysical Christian perspective. So one of his lines, or one of the things that he talks about, is who we are and the indwelling God that we have inside of ourselves. And when I first started to read Joel Goldsmith, I just was like, this is it. This is me. This is who I am. I also read a lot of Catherine Ponder. She has a lot of principles around metaphysics as well, and spirituality, and changing your reality and being powerful in your word and your ability to be able to create. So a lot of her books are, she has a book, The Dynamic Laws of Healing, but she also has another book, The Dynamic Laws of Wealth. And the book that I'm looking at right now is The Healing Secrets of the Ages. That's one of her books that I read. And I tend to read them as textbooks that I go back and forth. They're always just kind of sitting around, and I might pick up something and read a sentence. And I also love Dr. Michael Bernard of the Agape.
Beckwith.
Beckwith, yeah. Mm-hmm. Dr. Michael Bernard Beckwith. Mm-hmm. Really inspiring. He has game-changing. I don't think he's in this dimension. When he starts inspiring people, he's just off in another world. So he has a few different books that I read. So it's more about the authors. Yeah. And I will give you my favorite book, which is similar to, it's actually fiction, and it's The Shack by W.M. Paul Young. And the reason why it's just my favorite story is because it helped me understand tragedy in the world. It helped me understand when, there are mass shootings and people lose their lives over what we think is senseless violence. It really helped me understand that there is a spirit of the sacrificial lamb, and that sacrificial lamb will bring acknowledgement, will bring attention to a situation, will bring attention to a problem. And then once again, we have to move into action around that problem. So the Shack, that book, The Shack, really helped me move into that understanding.
Wonderful. I love that you gave us such a plethora of authors to explore, because so many of us are on our own spiritual path, and to kind of check it out, check out these different authors that Jill mentioned. And also we will post links in the show notes for this episode on the website at happyblackwoman.com, where you can click the links and get into the different authors that resonate with you. So thank you, Jill. And for all the women who want to stay in touch with you after listening to your interview here, where can they go to stay in contact and get more of your wisdom? JillFlowers.com is my website. And there's also an email there where you can contact me directly. I usually answer all of my emails within like a 24-hour time basis. So sometimes people have challenges, and I'm always happy to connect via email. But Jill Flowers, JILL Flowers, FLOWERS.com is the best way to get in contact with me. Awesome. Well, thank you, Jill, for being on the show. And thank you for just giving so much wisdom for us today. You are so welcome. Thank you so much for having me, Rosetta. My pleasure. And ladies, thank you for joining us and listening to our conversation here with Jill Flowers, our spiritual life coach and soul activist. For those of you who don't know, this is the 101st episode. So that means there's 100 more to listen to if you have not gone back to catch up on all of our other shows. You can go to happyblackwoman.com, click on the podcast tab, and binge listen to your heart's content, all for free. Until next time, have a beautiful day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us on the Happy Black Woman podcast. If you want all the show's notes from today's episode, go to happyblackwomanpodcast.com. Plus, we'll send you a copy of Rosetta's free life mapping workbook. We look forward to empowering you next time. And until then, do something this week that makes you happy.